There is a world 4 billion miles away that is doing something no other world in the solar system does. It is cooling itself down, deliberately, continuously, using nothing but its own sky. Not because of where it sits in space, not simply because the sun is too distant to warm it, but because the haze wrapped around it acts like a radiator, bleeding heat away from a surface that already has almost none to spare. Scientists just confirmed this, and the more you understand what that actually means, the stranger the whole picture becomes. Most people think they know the Pluto story. Small world far away, got voted out of the Planet Club in 2006. End of story. That version of events left out nearly everything that matters. Because Pluto did not get simpler the closer scientists looked. It got stranger, consistently, stubbornly, almost defiantly stranger. Start at the beginning, the real beginning. In 1930, a 24-year-old observatory assistant named Clyde Tombaugh was handed one of the most tedious jobs in the history of astronomy. He photographed the same patches of night sky on different nights, then flipped back and forth between the image plates, staring for any single point of light that had shifted position against the fixed background of stars. Most nights, nothing. Then, on a plate taken in February of that year, something moved. A tiny dot, barely a speck, had drifted. That speck became Pluto. Named, celebrated, taught to every schoolchild as the 9th planet for the better part of a century. And then, in a single IAU vote in 2006, formally reclassified as a dwarf planet. It remains the only world in recorded astronomical history to be discovered, celebrated, and then voted out of its own category. For a long time, that felt like a full stop. Pluto was small, distant, and easy to set aside. Scientists had other things to study. Then, in July of 2015, a spacecraft called New Horizons arrived. It had been flying for 9.5 years, covering 3 billion miles across the empty dark. And it had exactly one chance. No orbit, no second pass. Just a narrow window lasting minutes to photograph and measure as much as it possibly could before continuing outward into the Kuiper Belt forever. What it sent back rewired everything scientists thought they knew. A vast pale plane shaped like a heart, later named Sputnik Planitia, stretched across the surface. Smooth, eerily young-looking, carved into a basin 2.5 miles lower than the terrain surrounding it. Mountains built from water ice, so deeply frozen that the ice behaved not like ice, but like solid rock, rising more than 10,000 feet into a thin, layered sky. Fields of nitrogen ice appeared to be slowly churning in convection patterns. Glaciers in motion on a world everyone had assumed was completely inert. And above it all, layer after layer of blue haze stretched hundreds of miles upward, visible even when the sun backlit it from the other side of the planet. Pluto was not a fossil. It looked like a world still in the middle of becoming something. But New Horizons only got one look. It captured what it captured and kept moving. Whatever it missed stayed a mystery, and the data it sent back, extraordinary as it was, raised questions that a single flyby photo could never answer. To go deeper, scientists needed a way to read Pluto's chemistry remotely, to measure its atmosphere without flying through it, to separate what Pluto was doing from what its largest moon, Charon, sitting only 12,000 miles away, was doing at the same time. That is exactly what the James Webb Space Telescope made possible. Webb does not work like a camera. It reads light, breaking it apart into individual wavelengths to reveal the chemical fingerprints of whatever it is observing. Pointed at a faint reflected speck of sunlight billions of miles away, it can identify specific molecules, measure atmospheric temperatures at different altitudes, and track how a climate system behaves over time. No spacecraft required. The problem was that Pluto and Charon sit so close together in the sky from Webb's perspective that earlier telescopes could never cleanly separate their individual signals. Every attempt to measure Pluto's heat alone kept bleeding in warmth from Charon sitting beside it. Webb's much larger mirror and far more sensitive infrared instruments, particularly its MIRI instrument, finally solved that problem for the first time. And what it found was something planetary scientists are still working out how to fully explain. Back in 2017, a researcher named Shi Zhang at the University of California, Santa Cruz published a hypothesis that most of his colleagues found unlikely. He argued that Pluto's atmospheric haze was not insulating the world below it, the way haze behaves on Titan, Saturn's moon. Instead, he proposed the opposite was happening. The haze particles were absorbing sunlight during the day and radiating that energy back out into space as infrared heat at night, faster, far faster, than Pluto's extremely thin atmosphere could ever hold on to it. In effect, the haze was not acting as a blanket. It was acting as a radiator, actively pulling heat away from a world that barely had any to begin with. His team published a clear prediction. If this was real, Pluto's haze should glow unusually bright in mid-infrared wavelengths, bright enough to detect, if anyone ever built a telescope sensitive enough to see it. That telescope launched on Christmas Day 2021. By 2022, Webb's MIRI instrument had separated Pluto's thermal signal from Charon's cleanly enough to test Zhang's prediction directly. A team led by astronomer Tanguy Bertrand at the Paris Observatory ran the measurement. The results were published in the journal Nature Astronomy in June of 2025. The prediction was confirmed. Pluto's upper atmosphere is genuinely being cooled by its own haze, running approximately 30 degrees Fahrenheit colder than models had expected before accounting for the haze effect. Bertrand described it simply a new kind of climate, one that behaves differently from every other atmosphere studied anywhere in the solar system. Think about what that actually means for a moment. Stop with the numbers and just hold the image. Pluto's sky is not passively cold, it is actively managed by particles of frozen organic chemistry suspended miles above the surface, absorbing energy and radiating it outward before anything below can hold on to it. A dwarf planet the size of Russia, 4 billion miles from the sun, running its own climate control system using nothing but haze. No one predicted it would work this way. And now that it has been confirmed, researchers are already asking whether similar haze-driven climates might be quietly operating on other distant icy worlds, Neptune's moon Triton being the most immediate candidate, and whether a similar kind of chemistry may have shaped Earth's own ancient atmosphere, billions of years before oxygen ever accumulated in our sky. That last possibility connects directly to the second thing Webb confirmed, and this one tends to stop people cold when they hear it explained properly. Pluto's haze is not just controlling temperature, it is making something. The same faint sunlight that barely reaches Pluto, roughly 1,000 times dimmer than what reaches Earth, carries enough ultraviolet energy to break apart methane molecules drifting high in the atmosphere. Those broken fragments do not vanish. They recombine. Slowly, over timescales that are difficult to hold in your head, they build into heavier and heavier organic compounds, reddish-brown particles called tholins that eventually drift down and settle onto the surface below. New Horizons caught early traces of this in 2015. Webb has since refined the picture considerably. Here's the detail that matters. Tholins belong to the same broad family of organic molecules that some researchers believe may have once rained down onto early Earth from space and from distant icy environments, delivering raw chemical building blocks for the kind of chemistry that eventually, after billions of years of further steps, led to life here. On Pluto, that same basic chemical process has apparently been running continuously for roughly 4 billion years. Not briefly, not as a trace reaction. A slow, steady snowfall of biological building blocks, landing on a surface so far below freezing that none of it has ever sparked into anything alive. It is a natural laboratory for the starting chemistry of life, running right now, on a world just barely within reach of our instruments, preserved in deep freeze exactly as it was when the solar system was young. And there is one more piece to this chemical story that makes the whole picture even stranger. Pluto has been slowly losing its atmosphere into space for billions of years. Methane and other light molecules drift upward, slip past Pluto's weak gravity, and escape. Scientists suspected this was happening. What nobody could confirm was where all of that escaping material was actually going. It was not simply vanishing. Something was catching it. Charon, Pluto's largest companion, roughly 750 miles across, orbits close enough that the two worlds are gravitationally locked to each other, each showing the same face to the other permanently. Most of Charon's surface is plain water ice, ancient and cratered, except at its poles. The poles of Charon are stained a deep, unmistakable reddish-brown, darker than anything else visible on the moon. For years, researchers suspected this coloring was connected to material escaping from Pluto. They could not confirm it directly. The mechanism turns out to involve Charon's slow, extreme seasons. Because of how Charon is tilted, its polar regions spend decades at a time in total darkness. That makes them extraordinarily effective cold traps. Methane escaping from Pluto drifts across the 12,000 miles between the worlds, gets captured by Charon's gravity, and freezes solid onto the dark poles simply because there is no warmth to keep it as a gas. When sunlight finally returns to those poles after decades of darkness, it does not simply melt the frozen methane away. Ultraviolet radiation and cosmic rays break the molecules apart and reassemble them into heavier reddish-brown compounds, the same tholins forming on Pluto's surface, locking that dark color permanently into the ice. Two worlds in a slow chemical conversation with each other. Pluto exhaling molecules, Charon inhaling them, converting them, keeping them. A quiet exchange that has apparently been running since long before either world had a name. In October 2024, a team led by researcher Silvia Protopapa at the Southwest Research Institute confirmed something else on Charon's surface that no one had directly detected there before. Both carbon dioxide, the same gas leaving your lungs with every breath you take, and hydrogen peroxide, the same compound sometimes used to clean a wound, frozen solid onto Charon's surface. The carbon dioxide most likely came from underground material exposed by ancient impact craters. The hydrogen peroxide appears to have formed through decades of radiation striking Charon's water ice and chemically rearranging it into something new. A moon that looks, from a distance, like a plain ball of battered ice. hiding a surface that is far more chemically active than it has any obvious right to be. Now go back to Pluto's surface itself. Because what New Horizons photographed there includes things that, a decade later, scientists still cannot fully explain. In a region called Tartarus Dorsa, the spacecraft documented something that had never been recorded anywhere else in the solar system. Tall, jagged blades of methane ice, some reaching more than 1,500 feet high, arranged in long parallel ridges covering vast stretches of terrain. Formations like this exist on Earth, in certain high-altitude deserts, where they are called penitentes. On Earth, they rarely grow taller than a person. Scientists believe they form through uneven sublimation, sunlight carving higher sections of ice into upward-pointing blades, while lower areas erode faster. On Pluto, that same basic process appears to have played out on a scale that makes the Earth version look like a rough draft, using methane ice instead of water ice, over a span of time that dwarfs anything comparable on this planet. A 2025 analysis suggests these blade fields may wrap around as much as 60% of Pluto's equator, an entire ring of frozen spires circling the dwarf planet. Elsewhere, a dark band roughly the size of Alaska stretches across the equator, stained deep reddish-black where tholins have accumulated thickest over billions of years on some of the oldest exposed terrain on the planet. And then there are the mountains. South of the heart-shaped plain, two enormous isolated peaks rise out of the surrounding landscape. Wright Mons stands roughly 13,000 feet tall. Pickard Mons may reach close to 23,000 feet, with a base wide enough to rival the largest volcanic structures on Earth. Both have deep depressions at their summits, surrounded by fractured terrain with lumpy, uneven flanks that closely resemble cooled lava flows. Except there is no molten rock on Pluto. If these features are what the evidence suggests they are cryovolcanoes. Structures that once erupted, not with melted stone, but with a thick slurry of water, ammonia, and other volatiles forced upward from somewhere deep beneath the frozen crust. The fact that these structures show almost no impact craters on their surfaces is important. In planetary science, craters accumulate over time. A surface with almost no craters is a young surface, one that was recently reshaped by internal processes. Wright Mons and Pickard Mons appear to have been geologically active in Pluto's relatively recent history. Something, at some point not that long ago in geological terms, was warm enough inside that frozen body to force material all the way up to the surface. Which brings the question no one can yet answer directly. Where is that internal warmth coming from? The leading hypothesis is the slow radioactive decay of elements locked inside Pluto's rocky core, the same basic heat source that drives geological activity on larger worlds, just operating at a much quieter level over a much longer timescale. And if that heat is real, if it has been quietly accumulating beneath Pluto's icy shell for billions of years, then the logical conclusion, the one researchers keep circling back to, is the possibility of a hidden ocean. Not on the surface, not even close to the surface, but buried roughly 100 miles down, sandwiched between the rocky core below and the frozen crust above, kept liquid by that slow internal heat, and perhaps insulated by a layer of gas hydrates acting as a kind of thermal blanket. The evidence for this is not a photograph. It is a pattern in the surface above it. Cracks and ridges across Pluto align in ways consistent with a subsurface layer of liquid slowly shifting beneath the ice. And Sputnik Planitia, that famous heart-shaped plain, sits directly above what appears to be a gravity anomaly, a region where something denser than the surrounding ice is concentrated beneath the surface. Some models suggest the basin itself may have formed from an ancient impact and then been filled in from below, from liquid material, welling upward through the crust. Similar hidden oceans are already strongly suspected beneath Europa, one of Jupiter's largest moons, and Enceladus, one of Saturn's smaller moons. Both show far more obvious surface evidence of internal activity. But both are also much closer to the Sun, with additional tidal heating from the giant planets they orbit. Pluto has neither of those advantages. If a body this small and this remote is hiding a liquid ocean, it suggests that buried oceans may be far more common in the outer solar system than scientists had previously assumed. Not rare exceptions, but a standard feature of icy worlds that formed with enough rocky core to generate their own internal heat. What would it mean for a liquid ocean to have existed beneath Pluto for billions of years, sealed away from sunlight, isolated from radiation, fed only by organic compounds slowly seeping downward through cracks in the ice above, sitting under enormous pressure in total darkness at the edge of the solar system? The conditions are not the conditions anyone would design deliberately for life. But life on Earth has been found in places that should not support it either. The question is not whether Pluto's ocean is hospitable by human standards. The question is whether the basic chemistry has been in place long enough, at sufficient concentration, for something to have happened. There is currently no funded mission to go back and find out. No lander, no orbiter, no probe on any agency's books that would return to Pluto in any foreseeable timeline. The journey alone would take the better part of a decade, and deep outer solar system missions have rarely been prioritized when closer targets offer results in years rather than decades. For now, Webb remains the only working instrument regularly checking in, pointing back toward Pluto every few months whenever it enters the telescope's field of view, adding another data point each time and almost always making the picture stranger than it was before. Here's what all of this comes back to. Pluto sits inside the Kuiper Belt, a vast ring of icy debris beyond Neptune, estimated to contain hundreds of thousands of objects of comparable size, along with 1 trillion or more smaller bodies. Nearly all of them have never been studied closely. New Horizons photographed only 2. If one small, formerly dismissed dwarf planet is running a novel climate system, assembling prebiotic chemistry on its surface, exchanging molecules with a companion moon, possibly hiding a liquid ocean, and showing geologically recent volcanic activity, then there is no obvious reason to assume it is unique. It is simply the one our instruments can currently reach. The rest of them are out there in the dark, and we have barely started asking what they are doing.